Hey everybody, what's going on? Thanks for joining our live stream. We are so excited to talk about the new record, which we can't believe is finally out. I'm going to get the guys in here and let's get going here. All right, we got Mark Fossarelli, our intrepid keyboardist here, lead singer extraordinaire David Alley here, and John Toohey. And it's so awesome to be here with you guys, and very excited to chat about the album and instead of being cryptic about it like we've been for the last year.
Yeah,
Cryptic is
sure.
one way to put it. Yeah.
That's one way you could say
That's
it.
fine. That's one thing. How you guys doing?
Kicking the can. Kicking the can. Not coming out yet, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, kicking the can. We did a little bit of that, I think. Um, yeah. So I mean, man, it's some of you who are in the chat, I think, were in at the CD release show that we did on Saturday, and thank you to everyone who was there. It was unbelievable. And it's whenever you put out something new that you worked on real hard, it's very hard. I know for me, you guys might feel the same way. It's like, man, I hope this goes as well as I think. I hope people connect with the music, and I mean, you don't do it for that reason, but you really want it to people. You never want to hear, oh, their old stuff was so much better. so so I think that I don't know, as far as everyone I talked to that night, they really dug the new stuff, and we played some things that nobody's heard yet. And anyway, I just want you guys want to start with maybe some general sort of thoughts on the evening, and we can go from there.
Yeah, I guess it's good we haven't hit that part of our career yet, right? Where we've reached that point of their old stuff was so much better. No, the night went as well as we could have hoped. It was great. I know there was a bunch of people who couldn't be there. They reached out to us and said whether it was like Fourth of July weekend or they were doing something they weren't able to make it, but um, there was a great crowd. They were so supportive, and they were with us every step of the way. The other bands, Involute, Head with Wings, and I'm gonna mispronounce it again, and I feel awful. How I always want to say Shagohad, and I know that's not right.
Shagahad.
Shagahad. Oh my gosh,
Shagahad.
I'm so sorry,
The
guys.
emphasis on the Shah.
You Foo Fighters.
Yeah.
They everybody
Fighters.
did an amazing job and really made it an amazing night. We were talking amongst all the bands today. It really was a special evening. It's been long enough, and it was great to have that music out and see everybody again.
Yeah, I feel the same way. I mean, you kind of get if people watch this who are in bands, you kind of get like demo ears in a way, like where you kind of listen to it so many times, you get a little high in your own supply after a while, and then you start to question like, is this going to go over okay? And then you got to kind of reach back in, take a break. You got to reach back in and remember like why you did it, right? Which I know we've kind of been alluding to over the past months, right? Um, but it kind of, I'll be honest, I was nervous at the first rehearsal. And for those who came to the show, we got together, only a couple times, you know, probably collectively, what, maybe like 6 hours to 7 hours worth of rehearsal um,
Yeah.
on new material. And, you kind of have to just trust that, you know, that what you put into it in the studio and doing all the it's gonna like just it's gonna basically materialize in the live setting. And surprisingly, it actually it hits different than I thought it would. In fact, I would say that, like, listening to some of the videos that people have been posting, and if someone's watching this and they have a photo or a video, please like tag us. I've even gone as far as asking a couple different people now, if they have video, make a drive link and send it to us and we'll give you full credit. Maybe we'll cut it up and use it. But I digress. But my point was listening to like towns to grow up in, which, on the album, and when it's, on the platforms and you're listening to it, it's a bit more subdued than live. Like live, it was actually like a little more like ripping than I anticipated, and in a good way. And so, like, it's kind of fun to have a little bit of that magic, and I was excited to kind of get out there. And some of it was a little raw, in a good way. And I don't think we could have asked for any better. Um, the crowd was fantastic. And to Mark's point, I know a lot of people who even bought tickets who could not come, but they bought tickets just in case they could. And, a couple, individuals couldn't make it. And I understand like some people were sick and stuff like that, but I just that level of support was awesome. What more could you ask for? Good friends, family, good bands. The house sounded killer. Space Ballroom sounded great. The staff was cool. Everyone was cool. It was just a killing night. Awesome.
Yeah, let me tag on that, because one of the things that I thought that's different about this than any other album we've ever written was that we, on every single one, with no exception, at least the genesis of the ideas were us in a room together. Maybe someone would bring something in, but then we'd be jamming on it. We'd be, working on it a little bit. Then we'd send demos home and do our things. But it all started in a room, versus this album where practically none of it started together. And I think even so to add to what you were saying, Dave, it's like, that's also like, okay, is this actually going to work like it does in my brain? Like, is it going to actually work when we play it? Because like Towns is a deceptively difficult song to pull off, I thought. And when I was practicing to kind of get okay, I did all this stuff. Now I'm practicing it to play it live. I'm like, wow, this is really challenging. And can we get the right vibe for it? Are we going to be able to do it justice? I never thought about that before in previous songs, previous albums, because we wrote it in a room. I was like, oh, I know what it sounds like. It's just going to sound like a better version of that, a more energetic version. But I didn't know that personally this time. And luckily, when we started rehearsing, I was like, oh, okay, all right, this is going to be good. But even still, we're in ears. We're not in a big room like we were on Saturday. So it's like, I hope it translates. But it really, speaking to what you were saying about seeing videos that people were putting up, it sounds awesome. And it did translate like I always wanted it to. So that's like a huge artistic win right there when you like that happens.
I think like the nature of the song, at least the first half of the album, and for those who have purchased it, thanks for checking it out. If you've listened to it already,
Yeah.
If you're on the fence about getting it, this is your call to action to buy it. And I think John
There
put
you
up
go.
in the chat. No, but listen, like we've said, like the album is about coming of age, growing up, transitioning your life, death. What it's like to kind of mature, right? And the songs get edgier and darker as the album progresses, very much like life does, right? So in the beginning, things seem a little bit more playful, I guess. I don't really use that word often, but like, playful, a little bit easier to listen to. But to your point, John, like I don't think maybe some, more musician type people might listen to it and go, there's a lot there's a lot going on. Even though it's like kind of deceptively playful and kind of relaxed, there's a lot of stuff going on. And I think to your point about, this compared to old albums, I've never showed up to a rehearsal not knowing what I have to play. Do I have to play a keyboard thing? Do I have to like, who's going to sing this? Like, do I play guitar? I mean, because it was kind of put together in different ways. And when you have no limits and you decide to put, 60 keyboard tracks, Mark is a keyboard wizard and did a lot of stacking and great programming, but like, you don't know, you have to trust that that's what he's going to bring to the rehearsal.
Yeah.
Right. But like, yeah, I think, I think that this was really cool in a way that was completely unplanned, at least for me. And I also want to say that, I think that, again, I think the crowd they dug it. And I think it's a nice departure from like some of the other stuff that we typically put in our set. And I feel like, these kinds of tunes are going to benefit, some of the longer sets that we have, and kind of allow us to change things up and have fun in a different way,
Yeah. And I know for me, like the overall feel of this, of a lot of our new songs, especially the ones that we played, it's weird because it has sort of a dichotomy of, there's like a very heaviness of subject matter that as we've talked about a bunch of times is very personal, which makes it difficult to perform. But at the same time, the sonic palette that we used is uplifting. And that is not something that, like, you know, if you listen to the Fifth Row, there's not a lot of uplifting, and anything that is uplifting on it is sort of a sarcasm, you know, like JCN or something like that. It's like, you know, it's a little bit tongue in cheek. This is not, there is no tongue in cheek, and the darkness is balanced with the light in it, to you know, use an overly used metaphor. And it almost took me to have to play it on Saturday with everyone and to get their reaction to actually feel like that was the case. That was what we were shooting for, you know. But that's that feeling is, I feel like, new to the band, like entirely new, unless I'm missing a key component.
No, I think that's. I mean, we've had a little bit of. We've always tended to be on more the melancholy side, so we haven't really explored. There's like little pieces of it in some of our older material, but not as much as we did this time. For sure.
I mean, to kind of go, so there's a couple questions in the chat, but
Okay.
you know, Joe Callahan mentions that he gets some Peter Gabriel vibes from this album, very deep. And you know, I think that was that was intentional.
Yeah.
I mean, when we did the Fifth Row, we said we're going to make permanent waves. We're going to make permanent waves. It's going to be our version of permanent waves. That's going to be our North Star. It doesn't sound like that, but it sounds like a thing that, you know, if I said that to someone, they might get like, oh yeah, there's a lot of Rush influence. Like, we get it, you know, like, and for this one, it was like, well, you know, who talks deep, who goes into the emotional side of things, who's in the progressive rock genre, who's not Steven Wilson, because, you know,
Right.
that, you know, kind of more melancholy, moody vibe progressive rock, European prog rock is like a thing right now. A lot of bands do that.
Yeah.
What's something different?
Yeah.
Right. And Peter Gabriel's songs are always the same thing. It's always a narrative of, I'm sitting here and I'm doing this, and this is what I see, and this is what I'm going to talk about. Like literally almost every song. Right. And the opening to the album, for those who came to the show or bought the record, A Time and Place, is literally like an ode to, you know, Here Comes the Flood, like the live version of that, or, you know, anything that Peter Gabriel does where it's just a piano synthy thing and vocals, right?
Mm-hmm.
And very like first person kind of approach to things. And I'm glad that kind of translated, you know. And I think one of the other North Stars that we had was kind of like, how can we not trick people, but like, how can we get somebody who's not necessarily a progressive rock fan to be like 4 minutes into the song and start to realize that they're listening to progressive rock, you know? And I think we did that on a lot of the songs pretty well.
Oh man, and I have a fun anecdote to say about that. You know, our good buddy Will Early, one of my best friends, great guitar player, guitarist in the Hot Club of Black Rock. He said to me after he listened to when we put out Towns, you know, he was like, "Wow, man, I didn't realize it was like 7." He goes, that song's not like super long. I'm like, yo, it's over 7 minutes. He goes, it is? And I said, and did you like that most of the song was in 7? He, you know, Will's a great musician. He goes, oh my God, I didn't even pick up on that, which is like the ultimate compliment, to be like, we did this thing that is considered an odd time. And like, you know, it could be, dealt with in a different way. Like he could have said, oh, I like that the song is in 7. He goes, oh, I didn't even realize that the song was in 7, which is exactly the point. Is to just, these songs should, well, like just
Salisbury
sort of
Hill.
Like Salisbury Hill, exactly.
And people are like, well, you know, this song's awesome, and then you're like, you know, this is kind of like prog rock song,
right?
Like,
right, exactly.
You're like, oh yeah.
So,
you know?
I want to let me go through some of these things because we got some questions and thoughts in here in the chat. Rob Maynard, hey Rob, thanks for coming, man.
Hey Rob.
He says it was a great show. Everyone brought it. I love that, man. Thank you. Pastor Kevin Mullins says we'll be road tripping tomorrow and go through the whole album. Excited to do so. Thank you. I can't wait to talk to you maybe next Sunday about it. Joe Callahan says, John, were you happy with your acoustic solo for Coming of Age live? For me, it sounded great. Yeah, very happy. I was very worried about how that was actually going to come out, for 2 reasons. Reason one being that to try to do an acoustic like thing using my electric and not having to bring another guitar is, I've heard a lot of people do it, and most of the time it's not good. And I was really hoping that the actual, just the tone quality would be good. So I worked a long time with all my new equipment to kind of get it so that it sounded, as close to the record as possible without it, without actually playing an acoustic guitar. So yes, very happy. And then the second part was that solo on the record is on the song Coming of Age, I'm referring to, is totally improvised. It was a one taker. In fact, it was my first take. This happens rarely. I mean, a lot of times I'll do 20, 30 takes and then pick some of the best ones, and then maybe I'll combine them or relearn them and play. It depends on the song. This one was just my first take. And it was like, wow, where did that come from? And so, but then I did do 20 or 30 takes, and none of them were as good. And I was like, all right, I guess we're gonna, let's go with this one. Everyone seemed to like it, and then, so that's one thing. And then when I'm like, okay, I actually have to go back and learn this for the recording, and it's another one of these things that's it sounds pretty simple, but it's actually deceptively very hard because the phrases go over, we'll get a little technical here, go over the bar line and kind of weave in and out, and there's an odd amount of space in between. I was just for lack of a better term, I was just kind of feeling through this part, I kind of wanted my own version of like Wish You Were Here, like the acoustic solo in the beginning. It's not quite that, but that was my sort of thought, like Dave said, a North Star. And so at the first rehearsal, I thought I had it down that we had, and I was like, oh, whoa, I was off by like 2 measures at one point. I was like, oh boy, okay, I got to make sure that I got to make sure I can actually play this. So yes, long-winded answer. Very happy about how it came out.
And actually, just to kind of really quick, go off. So you said that the other day when we were at rehearsal after the take that you said you were totally messed up on, right? You had said something like it was like that was a one shot, and I don't really remember you doing it that way. And I was like, oh, it's interesting. And then actually on the way home from the gig, I was like, wow, that solo went really well, right? But then I was thinking about that song in general. And fun fact, right? The mallet parts in the beginning are all just a one take, right? That wasn't even supposed to be the part. It was just a demo placeholder. And then Jake recorded his part to it, which was just a doubling of what I had done, and we kept it. And then the lead vocal in the first verse is the scratch vocal.
Yep.
Demo, just feeling it.
Yep.
The in the bridge, all of the synth parts are just demo placeholders, not the climb stuff, but the all the big Taurusy things and the weavy shit. That was all one shot stuff, placeholders. And the vocal parts that you're all that is literally down here, one shot.
Yep.
Placeholders.
Yep. And we did try to redo those too, in other sessions where we're actually really doing and it just wasn't.
They were so good.
They were, yeah. I don't. And that's that for a progressive. We should probably state this, for a band that's sort of rooted in progressive rock. That is not typically in progressive metal. That is very atypical as to how that goes down. Typically it's going to be, we're going to re-record this as many times as possible to make it perfect and sand off the edge, which works for a lot of great bands. But for some reason, this album being more organic, it's like why mess with the emotion was right, and if the emotion was right, then the part was right.
Yeah.
And that I'm sorry to interrupt you, Mark. That goes off of Rob Maynard had asked how much has the album changed over its life cycle, and in a lot of ways on this record. So one thing that I think we learned on this record is when we're demoing and cutting ideas, make sure we're using the right preamp and we're using the right microphone, and we're recording. Even though it's the demo or it's an idea, do our best to make sure that it's as usable as possible, right?
Yeah. So
that we're not hot swapping, microphones, or we're like, oh man, I really wish we captured that in a different way, right? So to your point, Rob, your question, some of these songs, we tracked over and over and just kind of ended up back at the beginning again on a lot of parts throughout the album, actually. But yeah, no, I just thought that was not to close the hatch on Coming of Age, the track, but like that was something that I was laughing about on the way home. I'm like, yeah, I kind of feel like we started the song with all demo stuff. We ended up with mostly all demo
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah.
And it's the title track. It wasn't the original title track, but it ended up being the title track. And it is Coming of Age, which makes sense. Like maybe we're at that point where we're just going to cut live records moving forward.
Yeah, I'd love to do that. We'll talk off air about that. Let me grab another question here and field it to Mark. Kevin Mullen says, "So is the songwriting process changing to you not being in the same room for the genesis of the songs related to the idea of the album title? Is this part of your band's coming of age?" Which is very incisive.
That's a great question. I think inadvertently it was. I think we all agree that I mean, we had to do this album this way out of necessity for so many different reasons. But it wasn't, one of the reasons we're so proud of it is because it came out great, which when we were going through the process, we definitely had anxiety about because it was not the way we intended to do it.
Yeah.
We had a plan for how we wanted to record it, and we had all these ideas. And this is even after, some of the stuff that came up, and we weren't able to do it that way. So out of necessity, we had to write a lot of it separate, or we started a little bit in a room, then we had to do a lot of it this way. We had to do it separate. So it forced us to come of age as musicians and writers and find new ways to basically, it's like you kind of deal with, as a kid, you get new things and you deal with those stresses and those problems and you take them head on and you learn from them and you got to work through them. So I think that's what we had to do. I don't think we would want to do it that way again. I don't think I would want to. It's there, it's an option, but I know the next time around, I definitely would like to be, connected with everybody, at least in a, it's one thing to go away into your own space and kind of work out some of the little minutia things,
Yeah.
but the overall, or the bigger picture stuff, it's great to be connected with people. And I think we would, I think it would be nice to not not go do it this way again. But that being said, it really came out great. So, and that was a great, we're really happy about that. Especially given the things being so bright. Like that's amazing that it came out that way, given how, all that we went through and how we had to put the album together.
I mean, it kind of proved to me like we can do it if we need to. And I think that, in the future, I kind of feel like we'll probably find somewhere down the middle where we'll do the vast majority of things together, and there's going to be a spot for this type of activity, where like people have ideas and they start shooting them across the bow, and you know I think it'd be different in the final, like the last mile of the record will be very different
Hmm.
versus like showing up and being like, cool, it's done, like we're just going to play the thing down, right? Versus, really kind of chiseling things apart a little bit near the end there, which,
There's no there's no like right way or wrong way to do it, and some people are so stuck in one way or the other. And I think even in our own upbringings, like we've in our career, we've seen both approaches and we've experienced both. So I think we have an even better idea of like what's the pros and cons of each side and how to, you know, how we can use it to our advantage and
of
how to do
all
it better next time.
of all record kind of like the subject matter of the record, it kind of lends itself to be introverted and like
Mm,
with your thoughts and like by yourself, right? Because so like, if you're going to try to get deep and you're going to try to let it out and air it out, it's a lot easier to do like by yourself downstairs, or like in the studio by yourself
Oh,
in the
dude.
dark,
Uh,
so like
oh yeah.
you can kind of stretch out a little bit more in an emotional way, right? Even though, there, for example, like for me, like, I don't necessarily have the facility that the other guys have, right? In terms of like the way that they play, the way that they write. But like, I could sit with a loop for an hour and just go till the cows come home, right? And like find the moment. And like it's a lot easier to do that on your own time than on the band's time. Right? So I think that of all albums and all subject matters to kind of be isolated, separated from each other, it actually might have even strengthened the narrative a bit and strengthened the emotional connection because, hopefully that kind of comes across a little bit in some of the album, that there's like a bit, not desperation per se, but like there's a yearning for connection, there's a yearning for this, and that was the whole point, right? Is the self-discovery, and you kind
Yeah.
of get that by yourself, right? So
Well, dude,
yeah,
and
we
it's
got lucky in that sense.
I
Yeah.
100% agree. And, I know I'll speak for myself, but I'm sure you guys feel similarly, especially with the lyrical content. If you're, it's hard to be. It's hard. It's hard for me to be vulnerable about real stuff. Um, that's sort of a personality trait of mine that I've been working on, and especially when you're writing lyrics to a song and you're talking about the stuff that we're talking about on this, and we've gone through all that stuff. That I don't think I would have been open enough to really be like, hey, like, I'm thinking this, like if we're sitting like we've done before, with a couple people in the room. Although Dave and I did sit for a couple songs and worked on stuff, which was great, but we were already into the process by that point. That's new. That's new for me. And the fact that, at least for my contributions, it was incredibly difficult in that way, and vulnerable, but also that's kind of where the your soul feels the best, for lack of a better term. For me, I was just like, oh man, I'm doing something that I've wanted to do and need to talk about. I need to put this out here, and I'm going to do it. And I really hope it's not, you always have this, I always have this thought where it's like, oh man, it's one thing to present a riff or an idea or a part, and it's another thing to be like, I am talking about this tragedy that happened in my life, and I'm telling you exactly how I feel. That's tough. I feel like in most of our other music in the past, it's a story, or it's about something that happened, which is sort of depersonalizing it a little bit, which is fine. A lot of songs are like that, but I don't think I ever, until this record, wrote like about me. Ever. It's always my observation, or it's my thought on this thing, or it's whatever. And there's like this layer of sort of like this, and not this time around. And maybe that's maturity. I don't know. I don't know what it is, but we're trying to get there.
No, I know exactly what you mean. And I think as us as instrumentalists, I don't know if you feel this way, like we can sort of hide behind the music where it's like we can portray that emotion, but it's still abstract. It's not
Yeah,
like I'm
there's
not
a
like
layer.
looking.
There is a layer there. Yeah.
Yeah, like if I think about when we first started working together, I probably couldn't look you guys in the eyes when when I presented an idea, and that being a chord progression or a riff or something, let alone, like you said, like a lyric that is so deeply personal. So to learn how to get out of that and remove that layer and find that balance, yeah, I definitely, there's definitely a maturity and a time. And Dave, I think you're right. I think going through all this helped us get to that point. I don't know if we would be there without that.
Yeah, totally agree. Okay, let's go back into the chat. We have some other stuff we want to talk about too, but I want to make sure we get to everybody's comment. William Wahlberg says, "Hey, Mark, I wasn't able to make the release party, but I hope I can pick up a copy from you. I'd love to hear it."
Hey, Bill. Yeah, absolutely, definitely. Bill's an awesome. Bill has he told me about seeing Porcupine Tree actually at Near Fest, like their first time
Wow.
over there, and he had. I think he told me he had like a reel of photos, or like he had the original, and he told me all these really. He's gone to a lot of shows, and worked on some piano stuff with me, and he's a great music fan, good guy, guitar player too, Jim.
Oh, nice. Okay, I'd love to meet you. Rob Maynard says, "Please to share alternate title contenders," and I think he was saying that like Borat. So, but I'm not going to do the. Okay, alternate title contenders. Well, I can tell you what it was. When we first started talking about it, it was going to be "Towns to Grow Up In," another lead-off single, and because we from the get-go, even before we got really started writing, we were like, we cannot do a Fifth Row Part 2. The Fifth Row was, an such an awesome undertaking and endeavor, but a story that was about things that we're thinking about with AI and all these things, and a dystopian future, which is perfect for progressive rock, right? But it was also sort of impersonal, as it has to be. And we said, well, we can't do that. We can't do a Fifth Row Part 2. We have to do something else. So what is not that? Well, was not that is talking about what we actually feel, things coming from us, towns we like. Let's talk about the towns we grew up in. I mean, I don't know if everybody knows this here, but most of the band grew up in one area of the state, and I grew up like 30 minutes outside there. But in what did you call it? Who at the show, Dave? Everyone who lives in a Barry, who comes from a Barry,
The Burries.
a Bury,
Yeah.
but it is a very specific feel. So we immediately, because I actually think, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think "Towns to Grow Up In" was the first song idea we had for this record, right? I don't think we had another thing for this. Yeah.
No, that was 100% the first.
Yeah, the first one. So we were like, well, this is what the record's about. It's about growing up, and it's about I guess it's a little nostalgic, and then we decided that coming of age actually represented the whole better. So
I do have a couple. I'll share just a couple because I always save the working titles. So I had a bunch, and I'll read them down. We should, if you want to steal them, no problem. If anyone's on here and wants these, I think some of these are pretty great. I had "Travel Lightly," "Living in the Dying Age,"
I remember
"Meridian," "Reverse Forward," which was a play off of that Coldplay vinyl that I have right there. "Souls on Fire," "Bending Light," and then the rest were just other random bullshit. But yeah, I had a bunch, and then "Towns to Grow Up In" was one of them. In fact, I had the idea, the title of the song before the lyrics of the song. Like, so fun fact, Mile Marker Zero has a really, really, really old song that we never released, that we played live like 2 times. One time at Toad's place, and it sounded killing, and we should really re-record it. A grunge rock song called "Cemetery Road." And the song "Cemetery Road" is about a part of Middlebury, Connecticut, right by where I grew up. There's a road called Cemetery Road. And it was a completely different vibe, but that was kind of like, one of the impetus, moments where I was like, yeah, we wrote about Cemetery Road, like it's right about the town and growing up there. And I had written some poem too, which maybe we'll put out at some point. That was kind of like about like growing up in Middlebury, Southbury area, the Burries. But yeah, no, we always have a lot of titles.
Yeah, always. So. And usually they're not fit for telling other people what they are.
Yeah, when you first said working, I thought you meant that, and I was like,
no. I meant like titles in my head that were like potential like album idea titles, like not like not the ones that we do for the songs that are completely inappropriate, right. Which we didn't do on this record, by the way.
Yeah, we actually, the last 2 we had to we're like, oh, well, we started last time. We're like, yeah, we're gonna be kind of like story. We should probably not do that.
Yeah,
so we'll have to get back to that next time.
All right, couple other things. Kevin Mullen says, I think the album cover art is stunning. We totally agree. The color palette and the overall image is very moving. Who is responsible for that? Well, the artist who rendered it is a guy named Michael Starr. He's from Europe, and we found him like you find everything these days, which is online. And a lot of the times what we've done with the last record and this one is we'll use a forum, and people will submit different ideas, and usually it's guided a lot by Dave, because Dave always has really good image ideas. So Dave's like something like this, and have a very specific sort of description. Here's some band album covers that we like. Don't do this, but here's a feel. Here's a color palette. Here's a thing. And this guy Michael Starr just did some incredible stuff, and we were like, wow, this is the guy. So that's how we picked that. But the idea of this thing sort of coming to life, and this, I don't know, what do we call it? The bush, the hedge, whatever that thing is.
Well, yeah, it was kind of like trying to do like a tree, but not. You know what? Right. It's so weird, right? How like the collective consciousness of the world. because like, I've started to see this kind of image of a tree is being used in a lot of different ways. Bridgerton. I saw your counterpart Jeff Toohey the other day wearing a hat that had a tree on it. Like, and I just think that it's like, the collective consciousness moves like together, right, in certain areas of the world all at the same time. And for us, it was like, the idea of like organic matter. We wanted like the album to sound organic and be about real stuff and
Yep.
the roots growing up where you grew up
Yep.
and like flourishing and death and birth and is it annuals and versus what do you call it
Perennials.
perennials, right? Like things that keep coming back to life, the cyclical nature of how the world works and nature works, like
Yeah.
all that stuff is very much like kind of important. So nature was something that I thought that focusing on that would be really great. And also it's very, very different than it's the exact opposite of the fifth row, which is about robots and it's a sterilized environment, right? So it's like, what was the complete opposite of a sterile environment and dark colors, you know, and rather than use like neons and bright, like the more like kind of muted pastel-y colors, just kind of it just seemed warmer and a little bit more what's the word I'm trying to look for? Like a little bit more like deeper, richer,
Hmm.
and and a little bit more easier to contemplate around versus like, bright neon kind of vivid colors.
Yeah, totally. Rob Maynard is piggybacking on that. He says, "Love the art and want to piggyback. It calls back the Roots imagery used on the
Yeah.
cover of Out of the Ground Into the Fire, which is one of our
Yeah.
older albums
I
way
will,
back in the
I will
day."
grab here while you guys talk. I will grab something to show.
Yeah, and you're totally right. And we did actually talk about that with this image. We're like, well, we don't want it to be exactly the same, but how can we? Is it okay to do a little bit of a callback? And we settled on yes, obviously. Dave's going to go grab that. I want to see if there's anything else in here that... Oh, okay, Joe Callahan. Let me say that all the instruments are mixed perfectly. No one ever overshadows another. Kudos to Jake. Everyone shines on this album. Yeah, we should say, for those of you who don't know this, our bass player, Jaco Lindito, also mixed this record and the previous one, The Fifth Row, incredibly. He's just so multi-talented, and I know he's going to be embarrassed when he hears the playback, but he he is also a great drummer. He's a bass player in our band. He's a great songwriter, good singer. He plays great guitar. Like, he's super multi-talented, and he's taken it upon himself in the last decade or so to really get into the art of mixing. And I will say this too, that we have tried to use other people to see what they would do with our songs. Essentially, what Jaco would do is he would do a mix of it's like a test mix, just to kind of get everything leveled and go, okay, this is what we're thinking. It's going to sound like this, and then we go, okay, and then we would send the text mix out to, and this time around we did it to a lot of people, really, some big names who we're not going to mention, don't ask, some big names, and people who've done incredible bands that we love, and they did a mix, and every one of them was really good. We didn't get any, they were all awesome in their own way, but none of it felt quite as right as Jaco's at all. I don't, whatever that is. Now, is that demoitis? I maybe a little bit, but I don't know, man. Like, when you go apples to apples, it's like he knows the music so well. He knows what we're going for. He knows what we like. So it's hard to top that in a way. And maybe we won't. Maybe next time we won't do any mixing of the demos, and we'll send it to someone. I always like trying new stuff, but yeah, he's incredible. So I'm glad you said that, Joe. He's going to love that compliment.
For Rob, he said that art reminded him of the imagery used on the cover of Out of the Ground. And for people that don't know, our self-titled record, Mile Marker Zero, that had like the satellite dish on it, had Thousand Nights, was in the Rock Band video game. That was actually released in a previous version the year before, and it was called Out of the Ground Into the Fire. And that was our first album proper. And to his exact point, it is very much inspired by that kind of imagery, because it was our first record. So when I was thinking about like coming of age and becoming like who we were, right, and kind of coming into our own, the Fifth Row was the first album we did with Jake, right? So
Yeah.
Jake was new to the band. He shows up and he's bringing a different type of energy and attitude and facility to the band. And this was like a different record where like now like we've got Jake is no longer like the new guy. He's like not only a friend, he's like been in the band now. So it was like, in my opinion, like, hey, like we're kind of, this is it. Like we've kind of finally gotten to the, like now we're hitting stride kind of thing. So to call back on that, so that was a good catch, Rob. You were actually part of the launch of that album, and you did. We talked about it at the release show. I don't know if you guys remember, but Rob did an interview for. He was studying journalism in
Yeah.
college,
Yeah.
and he did an interview with us. He came to rehearsal and
Right.
did an interview when that album came out, and that was super cool. But yeah, that was a really good catch. Not many people know. By the way, this is a Lichtenberg figure. If Tim tunes in, that's electricity going through a prism. And this was from 2008. So, maybe we'll sell these at one point. I got a bunch of them back there.
Just we'll get rid of them.
Collector's items. But yeah, no, that was a good catch, Rob.
That's awesome. Okay, so let's talk. I think that's it for the chat for now. This is always a hard question, but I think it's worth saying. What is your if you had to pick, you have to pick one. What is your favorite song on the album and why?
God.
Who wants to tackle that first?
I have some favorite moments. Can I do those?
Yeah.
Because I really think that every song is it means something different. So I mean, for me as a personally, I thought I liked Time and Place because it's the first time I've ever kind of just like been alone with my thoughts and just recorded something. You know, um, the lyrics were actually written for a song that Jake wrote. I I literally had he wrote a little ditty which he's put on Instagram at times, which maybe we'll work on someday. And I just wrote random lyrics to it, and I retrofit those over this thing, and it just was beautiful. And I had a moment with it. And another one where we kind of used the demo.
Yeah.
Um, so I like that, but that's kind of like more of an intro. I also genuinely like the very end of the album. Um, So some fun facts, right? The album, the lyrics to the first song come from a demo that Jake wrote, and it was called September Rain. So he wrote a song called September Rain. So I was thinking of September, and I even referenced that in the opening track. And the last song of the album is called End of August, which is a full year, right? A full year. So as much as we don't want to write concept albums, we write concept albums.
We just can't
so
help
the
it,
album
dude.
starts in
We just
September
can't help
and
it.
ends in August.
It's all Doug's fault.
Yeah, think about that.
So
inside
the
joke.
end
Inside
of
joke.
the very end portion of End of August, which is the closing song, which if you haven't checked out the record, when all is said and done in your life, all you want to hear is just like a good melody and like guitar, right? You could love progressive rock all you want, all the shredding, but then you got to throw on like just a singer songwriter in the end of your life days, right? You just want to hear some good melodies and some meaningful lyrics. The end of that song is about what, like a 2.5 minute drone build up. And for me, it just carries a lot of weight. And every time I listen to it, I kind of get like, whoa, this is like heavy, like emotionally heavy. It feels very much like a release. And I have the most unbelievable idea for a music video for it if we ever had a budget. But those are probably my two favorite, the bookends of the album, the very beginning, the very end. And then if I had to pick a track, I can't say which one I'm going to like live the most because we haven't played all of them yet. But, you know, I'm gonna go with I'm probably gonna go with Towns to Grow Up in, just because I feel like it does a lot that MMZ likes to do. Guitar solos, odd meter, good chorus, big bridge. I'll probably go with that.
I'm gonna kind of go with the moments thing. And as you were talking, I was thinking about it. I've said before that I think excuse me, I think Best Is Yet to Come might be the best chorus we've ever done. I think the bridge to Heavy Days might be one of the best bridges we've done. And I think the verses for End of August might be some of the best verses we've done. So
Hmm.
I think we've hit on each. End of August has, I have a personal experience connection with coming of age. I mean, not coming of age. End of August, that is always going to be very sentimental to me. But there's some really heavy moments there. Best Is Yet to Come. The melody, it's the combination of the sound palette and the core. It is just great. Man, you know, Heavy Days, since that idea came from me at the piano, I have a connection with that. I think that's some of the best. I've grown a lot when it comes to that, and the lyric has a deep connection to me as well. I might have to. Towns kind of is like the perfect, like if you had to sum us up in one song, like everything we do, I think Towns probably accomplishes that. So I guess I'd have to go with that as well. But I don't know if like in 5 minutes I would still say the same thing. It's kind of hard,
Yeah, it is
Yeah,
hard.
I'm just making
you
shit
know.
up. No, I mean I really like those two moments, but yeah, I agree with you. Like, yeah, I love that bridge in Heavy Days. It's awesome. The verse in Heavy Days is killing too.
Yeah,
Right.
I mean, I don't want to say that because like like that started with me, but I do really like that song. I can't wait to
I
play it.
do too. And actually, it's funny you said because one of my favorite moments, speaking of moments, is the piano intro to Heavy Days. It's very Mark. It's very you. But it really kind of conveys this sort of. I liked it from the second you brought it into us because I was like, oh, because it has this. It's sort of like pulling you forward feeling like something is about to happen, and I always liked that, like a lot of forward momentum, and that's just cool. And I love giving you features too, because it's just we always have at least one or two on every album where it's like, here, take the floor and do your thing, which
That
I love.
that bridge of Heavy Days is a Mark Busrelli bridge.
Oh,
That is like your bridge, bro. That's
Absolutely.
like if someone were to say like, what kind of stuff does Mark write? To John's point, I play the intro to Heavy Days and the bridge to Heavy Days. I go that if I could sum up Mark in like a minute and a half of music, that's what I would play.
Yeah.
Which is and that's a big compliment because I think it's like perfect.
Yeah.
You know.
Man,
Yeah.
as far as a song goes, I actually I got to go with Dave. I think End of August is my favorite thing I've ever been a part of writing. I because you're right, Dave. It has this sort of like it's sort of this very, would you say before, yearning kind of thing. That song really has that, and it has the sort of sentimentality. And I'm also a giant sucker for anything that could even be remotely in the power ballad category, where you start with like an acoustic guitar and it's kind of doing this, and then the song builds up and then it gets really power. I just love that journey, man. It's like a great, every good movie does that. Every movie I like anyway, and like this does that too. And um, I cannot wait to play this one live whenever we get a chance to do it. Speaking of, let's plug a gig. August 11th, we are playing the Prague on the Lake Festival it's Carmel, New York, right? Which is right over in the Westchester border. There's a bunch of great bands playing, including Involute, who opened the show for us on Saturday. Prague on the Lake. It's outdoors. It's gonna be really fun. So if anybody happens to be around August 11th, please come to it. It's gonna be great. And we played it a couple of years ago. This is the third year that this is going on. So that's,
And apparently we won't get shut down by the police.
and maybe this time we won't get shut down by the police.
They really
Hopefully
like that.
it won't be as humid this time. Remember that 2 years ago? It was like one of the hottest days of the
Yeah,
year.
it was. It was good. It was fun though. It was awesome.
No, for sure.
The cops loved us though.
Yeah. Let's go do a couple more comments and then see where we're at. Corey, our intrepid photographer, Corey Ricketts, said it was a privilege to watch the performance at your album release show. Truly brought phenomenal energy. Thank you, Corey.
Thanks, man.
Bruce Fox says Best Is Yet to Come is a hit. Also love Towns. Awesome, Bruce. Thanks you. Bruce. We do too. Doug says it's not my fault. He's referring to the concept album thing that I said a little while ago.
Totally his fault.
Yeah, it's a little bit your fault, but that's okay. You don't mind, do you? Yeah, that's good. That's that there.
You can't say concept album 300 times over 10 years and be like, "Yeah, it's not my fault."
Yeah. um. So okay. So I have another one, sort of maybe one more thought, and we'll take the last few questions, and then maybe call it an evening. But so I want to know from you guys, what was the most difficult part of this writing process for you personally? And you can also sort of dovetail that into um, the fact that we started writing during COVID and all that stuff too. But like, was that what was the most challenging part that you are now happy that was? Let's say you're happy now that it was challenging, like that we sort of overcame. Is there a moment that sticks out to you in this writing process that was like, oh man, okay, we got there, you know?
The specifically to the songwriting or all the stuff
The songs.
afterward
Yeah, yeah.
okay,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
okay. Because that's a whole nother
Yeah, yeah.
thing
That's
in
yeah,
itself.
yeah, yeah. No.
Oh man. Um,
I I
God,
probably
Dave.
say go ahead, Mark.
No, no, go ahead. You go first. I got to think.
I, I mean, I would probably say, when you're writing something like this, where you're kind of, you're in your little pocket, you're kind of doing your thing, you're kind of trying to let it out, like your emotions out, you're trying to find something that is meaningful to yourself, and you hope to God that like it's going to resonate with other people, and you have no feedback loop because you're by yourself. um you could be in the studio here and tracking all day and really having some great therapy sessions and coming up with some great stuff, but then you get in front of other people or you go into the actual recording session, and can you like make that happen again? Sometimes you can't, right? Sometimes you got to go back to the demo like we've done, because it's just like it just felt right. But I would say the hardest thing was probably hoping that and trying to make it feel real, right? And make it feel, even though we were disconnected and like, certain things were kind of socketed in at times, making sure that it was unified and it had a very cohesive MMZ kind of approach to everything. I think that was probably the hardest part. And surprisingly, it did that, you know. Like I said, like, I and guys the guys will know, like, I get the most nervous about everything, because I'm a masochist, and I just really I get so paranoid and scared of everything. And that's just how I operate. But, you know, as long as it's the five guys and we're playing, and it's gonna be fine, but I'd say probably trying to transition from being alone to trying to put that on tape again and make it happen, and keep the introvert at the top of the list, even though you're introducing it to a band of people who, let's call it like it is. We historically, someone shows up with an idea and it ends up out like completely different, like typically. And it's kind of hard to do that when someone is very emotionally invested in it. But what we did is, like, this part was very much like John's thing. So like, rather than kind of pick it apart, we did try to just make it the best John thing it could be. And that was something we not really done in the past. We really kind of deconstruct and rebuild and come up with something new. So that was probably the hardest part, but I think we, I think we did a great job with it. I don't know if I'm articulating my concern well, but
Yeah.
that was
No,
that was it for me.
it's great.
I think probably for me would be, you were talking before, like, well, you've a couple of things like going through this process. I learned a lot about like even more so what my strengths, what I'm really comfortable with, and what parameters I work really well in. And like Dave, you're a really, really good abstract thinker. Like I'm not as good as an abstract thinker. I have to really like focus when it comes to that. So for me, being alone here, um, like and especially in the keyboard world, if you're dealing with stuff and keyboards are not the main focal point of the song. There's the open canvas syndrome. There's so many different things you could try.
Mm.
Like you could do this or this, and then when you have so many, what's that called? Like when you have so many, it's something things like when you just too many options, you don't know what to do,
Oh, option
right?
paralysis.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Like so, and it's not only just the options. It's like not only like what are you gonna play, but how are you gonna play it with what sound, and then within like even before the sound, like what instrument are you gonna play? So I had to really like sometimes sit down and go, oh geez, okay, like and try. And then I always tend to feel comfortable bouncing it off of you guys, and I've learned to be like I know where my strengths are, and I trust your ears, both of you, especially, and you know when through this process. So but not having that, then it's hard. And then sometimes I'll think I have something great, and then I send it, and then even though I totally know that, there's that disappointment of like, oh crud, like I could have done this better or whatever. But I think going through that really forced me to be like have to go deeper and because you run out of options. Like you've it's like I've already done that or I've already used this sound. I got to try. You want to keep it fresh and not do the same thing all the time. So now on the other end of it, I'm really proud of that. And then also learning to let go of certain things too. I think about when the band started, how I would have looked at certain parts or certain sounds or approaches and been like, oh, I wouldn't want to do that. And now like I can hear something, but like I probably wouldn't have been open to that 10 years ago. But now I'm glad that like I've
Hmm.
matured to the point of being like, you know what, that's what's right for this, and it's go with it.
That's really good. I didn't know that. Like that's cool. I guess for me, it's kind of twofold, and the first thing is that the two things I did during the pandemic that kept me sane was writing this record and writing the Zero Sync album. Um, to be, I've said this a couple times in interviews, but it's really true. Is that other than my wife and my dog, out of all the craziness, that was the thing that kind of got me through this time, was being able to come down even with the world shut down and I lost all my gigs and I'm teaching my students remotely, figuring out how to actually use Zoom. Now we're sick of Zoom, but it's like this was one of the only things that I could actually like do and come off of it feeling better. Like, oh wow, okay, I did a thing. And so we were sort of writing this album concurrently with the Zero Sync project because I had nothing else going on really. And I in that project it was all Jake and I writing, right? And that was the very first time that I had really ever wrote everything in one go. Here's what I want the drums to do. Kind of like from a composer standpoint, right? Here's what the drums to do, and the bass is going to do this, and I play the bass, and all right, the keyboards are going to do something like this, and so that was happening sort of at the same time as we were working and sending ideas back and forth. When we'd have a lull in the band, then I'd do a little bit more, and it kind of that started happening. So the scary part was after finishing the Zero Sync project and we weren't done yet. We had other stuff. We didn't finish all the songs. I remember going, oh, I wonder if what I did is not going to work on this. I was nervous. I was like, I really hope that this is going to work for the band, and can I do it in this context? And I wasn't sure. I was like, I don't know. I've never done. We don't write like that. We never have. This is new, and I don't know. Like, if I write something, is Mark going to go, this is terrible? If I write this vocal line, is Dave going to go, I would never sing that. It's not, and it you kind of get in your head, right? I got in my head about it, and the fact that it actually, for the most part, was like, I'm very thankful to you guys because it was very graciously accepted to be like, oh wow, I really like this. Okay, let's work, and then we work on it. But it was like that was the hardest part. It was just more of a psychological thing, if anything, for me to actually go, maybe my contributions are worth it. Maybe I can do a thing and have it be like, wow, this is good. It was sort of validating. So at the other end of it now, it's like, oh, okay, wow. So I want to do more of this. I like this new aspect that I can, hopefully bring to the band more and things like that. So that's what I would say for that. All right, I'm going to jump back in the chat for another moment, and then we'll, if there's no more questions, we'll plug the record where you can get it. Bandcamp, our Bandcamp link is at the pinned to the top of the chat. So if you haven't bought, we also have new shirts, by the way, with a album cover on it. So you can also get that at the Bandcamp.
Soon. I haven't. I got it.
Soon.
That's not added
Yeah,
yet.
yeah.
That will be
We'll get
available
there.
soon.
That'll be soon.
Yes,
You'll sign up for our mailing list, and you'll know when that's available.
that's right.
Then, my wife says, "Thanks for the shout out during COVID, John Toohey. Griffin always gets the credit." You're welcome. My dog Griffin always gets the credit for getting me through, but also you, Lindsay. Thank you. Anybody else? Any thoughts or questions before we let you go? Have a wonderful rest of your evening.
Give people 2 seconds.
Yeah.
Because I know there's a little bit of a delay, right?
Yep.
Yeah, just to kind of, thanks to everyone for coming out, to the live show. Thanks for the support. It's been awesome. If you haven't heard it, check out the record. I know it's hard to do these days, but like really, like sit down with it. It's not that long. It's like 50 minutes. Give it some time, and hopefully you can kind of connect with it in an old school way, right? Because that was kind of the intent. And yeah, I the more I think about it, the more I probably would say End of August is my favorite song as well. The more I keep thinking about it, and also it was the only song we wrote like as a group, and by as a group I mean like we really kind of wrote it while Mark was like set up his keyboard.
Yeah.
For rehearsal that day. That was probably the fastest one we had. That was really done in like 15 minutes. The lyrics and stuff and the bridge or the end and stuff, it took a while, but and I think that's probably it's why it came out kind of innocent, and it's a different song for us too.
Yeah.
Kind of reminiscent of like some of our like the Burning Ground stuff, right? Where it was like, acoustic guitar, brighter kind of vocals, classic rock kind of vibe at times. But yeah, super. Yeah, we got a couple. We got to see. Oh, what's up, Craig?
Let me.
Hey, Craig. Good job setting.
Okay.
Craig, good job setting up Toohey's pedal board.
Yes, thank you, thank you for that, Craig. I actually have one thing I did want to talk about, so we'll wrap up with this maybe, and then we'll take the last question, which is our sort of bold stance as to not releasing the whole album on streaming like most people would do. We took a gamble, and we're taking a gamble right now, and we wanted to do this a little bit more. So I don't know if people don't know, we have some singles out that you've probably heard, but we are not releasing this record yet to streaming. It's going to be later in the year, which is kind of the opposite of how everyone does it nowadays. Most people do singles only, one song at a time. What's an album anymore, right? That's sort of how the world is going. Real short songs, of course, and also, you got to get it all on streaming and stuff like that. And we purposely decided to not do that this time around. We're kind of bucking trends. Now, it maybe end up being stupid. I don't know. We don't know. But we wanted to do this, and we can all sort of speak to that. We wanted to do something that we were like, it would be great. What if we super serve our fans, the people who've supported us, who've come to our shows, who they want to just like support us in any way possible. I already have a shirt. I'm going to buy another one. All that stuff is so vital to a small band like us. You don't even know how much that means to us to do. And we were like, what would be the thing that we're missing nowadays is scarcity and sort of like the exclusivity of like it used to be. It's like, oh yeah, I got this record. I got it a week before it actually came out. I had a hookup. That was like cool. And that was something that you really invest in. And we were like, well, what's the modern equivalent of that? And that is, if you come see us at our show, you can buy it. And then if you go to our Bandcamp page, you can get it, but that's it for the moment, and eventually, of course, we do have to release it, but this is a bit of a gamble. And what do you think, Mark and Dave? You think this is what kind of, you like this stance that we took or what?
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't like we're like throwing the in the ground, the flag in the ground, but I think it may, not like meaning like we're not anti-streaming, we're not anti-modern, like that's what I'm trying to say, but it felt right. It was like, this was a very old school, looking back, our chance to kind of do it the way that we saw the way how we saw it was done when we were starting out, when we were growing up. Um, and yeah, I mean, the fan reaction and people who come to see us and the messages we get, it's really amazing. And it's great, when you're a band and you go out and you play for so many audiences that, you're new to them, or even in our musical professional lives, we have to we play in other groups and other things, and music can become music, or can be background music to people. So when you actually get in front of an audience like we had the other night, it's just like it blows you away, and realize that we're lucky to have that connection with people. And I I think that makes sense, John, to really connect with that. And also, just let that exclusivity happen. And then, you know, and see where that goes. I'm interested to see. And I appreciate all the people that have already reached out to us and love the music. And we can't wait to see, where it goes. And also, obviously we put it on Bandcamp because we've met a lot of people that are not close to us, and we realize that not everybody can come to Northeast United States to see us. So we got to put it somewhere where they can get it. But
Yeah.
yeah, let's make that exclusive for now.
I feel like, I mean, the album is, if everyone had a record player and we could press it in a double vinyl and have it be something that everyone could have, I would do that in a heartbeat. And that's something that maybe we'll do in the near future. But you know, I think the goal, right, to John's point, is even if it's just one time through the record, just having, you have to do a little bit of work. You got to buy it and you got to put it in, or you got to rip it to your computer, which sounds old school, right? Um, and you'll listen to it, and the hope is that you'll listen to it, right? And you have a moment with it. And if it's only one moment and you move on, and then you only listen to songs and tracks in the future, that's fine. But I think that I'm hoping that more bands do it this way, and they start releasing their albums physical copies only in some fashion, right? Maybe it's just a download, but it's like it's only on Bandcamp, right? Not only is it good for the bands financially and helps them kind of prop up what they want to do in the future and kind of pay back what it costs to make a record these days, but also because a lot of music deserves like that moment to listen and just pay attention to it. And these streaming platforms just don't cater to that. There are some really amazing fans that we have that'll do it anyway, and they'll listen down top to bottom,
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
But the general public doesn't really do it that way anymore, right? But if there was a CD player, you had really no option unless you had like a 5 disc changer in your car, 6 disc changer in your car, or you wanted to risk, pulling out that CD wallet while you're going, 65 miles an hour on 95 in the Northeast, right? But hopefully people will spend a little bit more time with it, and hopefully that getting something physical might make them feel like how they grew up, right? So that's the point of the album, is to kind of be reminiscent and nostalgic for kind of how things were and how far we've come as people, right? So hopefully people buy it and check it out, give it that moment, and then they can degen into streaming it, right? And just listening to tracks in the future once it's out like that, But the true fans and the people that we've gotten to know so well, and the fans and friends and family of our band, they're vital to our success and our survival. So we appreciate them buying it and kind of jumping on board. It's been amazing.
Oh yeah.
And the great comments, to Mark's point, whether it's crying listening to it at the listening party, people were weeping, which is crazy. I was kind of teary eyed, but that's because it was finally out, and it was like, wow, cool. Hearing it blasted top to bottom in front of people is kind of a vulnerable moment.
Yeah.
But to see other people connecting with it like that on a first listen was kind of wild, right?
Yeah.
And I was like, maybe we have something special, even though it's not like what we used to write, But maybe just people can get that kind of mood and setting where they just listen to it. Maybe they'll have a moment too, right?
Yeah. I love that. All right, last couple things here, and then we'll let everybody go. Julian from Involute says,
Hey.
besides the concept, did you guys set different songwriting metrics for coming of age that you didn't have for the Fifth Row? Ooh, That's a tough one. I got one thought is we tried actively for this album to not be a concept album. We said we're not doing a concept album. No, we can't do a concept album. We just did one. We're not gonna, we don't. We like I said before, we don't want to be the next one to be the Fifth Row Part 2 because it's going to be an inferior version of the Fifth Row. We didn't want to do that, but we couldn't help ourselves. It just started happening as we were writing. It was we purposely tried to not, but there comes a point where you're fighting against something for so long. You're like, look, I remember having a conversation with Dave. I was like, Dave, this is like, it's conceptual. It is. It just is. Like we're writing to. It's just happening. So let's not fight it. And Dave was like totally on board. So that's the.
I would say, we always focus, for a progressive rock band, we like really try to focus on like the melodies and making things unique and having hooks and stuff, which, some bands do, some bands don't. But for this one, I would say like that was something I think I spent a lot of time on, at least for me, the amount of time I spent on the little 6-note pattern in Bizarre. Do, 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 right? Eight notes. I don't know how many melodies probably were played. God fucking knows. Excuse my language. Censor me. But like just trying to find things that just worked, right? And for me, it's a lot of hunting and fishing. But yeah, I think that was one metric. I guess I could say, instead of it being, at least for me, instead of it being an 8 out of 10, like for me, it was a 10 out of 10. It was like I wanted every song to have like something that somebody could sing back, and if they couldn't, I had to have a good reason why.
Yeah.
Like if it was like, that could have been a little bit more, singable or memorable. Well, maybe it didn't have to be because that wasn't the point of that spot. But most spots, almost all spots, were like, could somebody like sing this back?
I think this is the most melodic
section.
record we've ever done, hands down. Every melody, vocally, guitar wise, keyboard wise, like everything really is very melodically driven. And I know definitely for me, the one thing that I've sort of missed in a lot of modern music period, but definitely modern progressive rock and progressive metal, is that the emphasis has been shifted more towards rhythm or harmony, depending on the band that you are, which is great. I love rhythm and I love harmony. Don't get me wrong, but melody has been taking sort of like a second, third, fourth place, and that's one of the things that when we were listening to the influences, like we were talking about Peter Gabriel and stuff, it's like, dude, it's always, everything is so melodically strong that it doesn't, you can do anything you want because it's just so gripping. And so we definitely focused on that, as if to call it a metric, I guess, as everything has to be incredibly, the melodies have to stick in your brain.
We also said like bright, like colors, like it's okay to like there's a lot of like kind of clustery extensiony kind of stuff like in a lot of the sections, which was kind of unique. And yeah, I mean, I don't know, there's a lot, probably going for days. Like look at why people like Muse and Coheed and Cambria. I'm trying to think of more modern era progressive bands, right? Those they write songs, great songs, and then they just happen to be highly progressive in nature. I'm using those as like the popular wide reach kind of bands. That's the pull. If that's how you get people dancing. If people could dance at a progressive rock show, if anyone's been to a Coheed and Cambria show, I mean, they play, and they're out there, jumping around, having a great time, and not just punching each other, which is also awesome.
All right, last question here. Oh, it's not just a thought. Eric Bebevino says, if you make it to Central Kentucky, I'll help promote. You guys have come into your own. Thank you, Eric.
Wow,
We will definitely hit you up when we start making plans for getting out there on the road as much as we can. And last thing is, Joe Callahan says, my passion is driving 3 hours to see you live. Well, thank you, Joe. Thanks to you and Lisa for
Thank you,
coming
man.
to the show. It was awesome to see
That
you
was
guys.
cool.
And so, if there's anything else, how about we all sign off here? I'll play a song as it does the fade, and hopefully Facebook doesn't clamp down on copyrights here.
Check out the website, milemarkerzero.com. You could buy stuff in our store. Yeah, and come to the show. We're playing again in August at Prague on the Lake in Carmel, New York, with Involute, Shagohad, a whole bunch of great bands. Forgive me if I'm gonna forget people who are playing, but it's a killer lineup,
Yeah.
and it's something that I hope like keeps flourishing. The guys in Involute put this together. They started, like John said, a couple years ago, and you know, I want it to be a thing. I personally do. I think it'd be great for the community and great for the scene. So come on out if you're within the tri-state area and you want to hear some great bands and bump elbows with other fans of that kind of music.
Yeah.
So
August
Yeah.
11th.
August
And
11th.
and our
That's right.
Bandcamp page. What's the URL, Mark?
mmzofficial.bandcamp.com.
Okay, cool. mmzofficial.bandcamp.com. That's where all your MMZ merchandise lives, or it will soon. But we have the new album on there. We have our previous albums as well. Thank you all so much. It was really great. It's been an incredible weekend. We can't wait to see what's in store, and we got a lot more from us coming up. So thank you all so much. I hope everyone has a fantastic rest of your week, and we will talk to you soon. Let's do maybe a little coming of age.